Hey Swindlers, happy summer to you all. Hope you're enjoying our first few days here. It's pretty hot out, so I thought I'd make another chess video. And I have my summer hairdo going. My kids got bored, and they gave me a trim. I was very excited to share this game. This is against my older brother, Matthew. We've been playing chess kind of as a family since we were kids. I'd play both of my older brothers at chess just to pass the time. And I would always lose to them. They were always much older than me. Not much older, but they were much better at chess than I always was. So yeah, my last time I played my brother on chess.com was 2 years ago. He uses another site, and he was rated a 1,096 the last time he played. I know recently he's broken the 1,800 mark on Lichess, so I was really excited to play him again, and this is that match. So I'm playing the white pieces, and my older brother Matthew is playing the black pieces. So I start kind of classical chess, e4, nothing fancy, and he responds with e6, which I know is the French defense because every time we've played in the past 10 games or so, he would tend to play the French defense if he's playing the black. And I always hated it because it always ended up in kind of a close game, which I didn't care for. So I know that if he doesn't want to occupy the center with this first move here, that I need to do that and get control of the center. And then your kind of signature French move is pushing your queen pawn to d5 and creating this threat. And this is as much as I know about the French so far. So my book theory after this second move, sad enough, I don't know what the proper move is. I don't know if I'm supposed to take, and he takes. I mean, is this where I want to be? I don't really know if that's the best method, so I didn't do that actually. I moved my knight out to c3. I figured I'll just kind of defend here, develop a piece at the same time, and I thought that was good enough. So he comes out here with his bishop, and he has this nice pin, an absolute pin. So I see kind of the trick here is that he's trying to keep my knight from defending my pawn. So if he was to take with his pawn, I couldn't defend because I would be in check. So I thought, oh, I'm really smart. I'll just stop that by bringing my bishop forward. And now I'm kind of cutting off this attack here. And I feel pretty good about myself. And I think problem solved. Now if he takes, I can take. And then we have just kind of the standoff, and he'll either retreat or capture maybe, and I'm still looking pretty good. So that's my thought process at the time. But after I brought out my bishop, he just took with his. And if you notice, he removed my defender of my e-pawn, and after I recapture, he comes up a pawn right away. And I knew he probably knew exactly what he was doing. This is probably a trap that's well known to him that wasn't to me. So I felt like a fool right off the bat. But I kept playing. I thought, hey, I'll just target this pawn, which wasn't the best move. So I could have moved my queen to g4 here, and that way I would target the e-pawn, well, it was the d-pawn, the e4 pawn, let's call it, and I could also target the g-pawn at the same time. That would have been a good move, but I didn't do that. I moved my queen to e2, and my brother moved his knight to f6, watching out and watching out. So this threat, it did nothing because it was easily defended, and he did so with developing a piece. Now my queen can't go to the g4 square or the h5. So kind of bummed out about that. So I just decided to castle, give my pawn a little bit more protection, get my king safe right away. And it was just kind of convenient. I thought, why not? So my brother develops, getting some firepower on this pawn. So you can see there's a lot of kind of pressure on this d-pawn already. We got 2 attackers and 2 defenders. So I want to get rid of this pawn now. After I castled queenside, it doesn't matter if I move my f-pawn. Usually I don't like to move my f-pawn, and that's because I want to castle kingside. But since I'm castled queenside, I don't care if this pawn moves because it doesn't weaken my king at all. So that was my idea, just to try to remove that pawn from the center. And he brings his queen in, giving it a second defender to my 2 attackers. So if I was to trade away, he would come up on top there. And then I did this move, which looking back isn't the best. I think my idea was just to try to give my bishop an open file and move out of the way. I wasn't trying to, defend anything with my queen. I was just trying to make space for my bishop. So kind of a slow move. I'm sure there was other better moves I could have done, but that's what I did. So my brother takes, and instead of taking with my pawn, I take with my knight, trying to just get a little bit more developed. Now we have a pretty even battle going on here in the center. His king is not castled though, so I feel a little bit ahead in development. And I know he likes to, it's called fianchettoing your bishop. So when you put your bishop either here or here and have this kind of pawn triangle thing going on, that's called fianchettoing, and it gives your bishop just a nice long diagonal to look at. So that'd be, I think, a nice place that he's thinking to put his bishop. So, but the whole time, my a pawn is exposed here. So at this moment, I finally see that with his pawn move, and I remembered, okay, I need to defend here. So this move was really just to protect my a pawn. I didn't really have any other purpose, but I just saw that weakness. So he fianchettos, and I know he's going to try to castle soon. So I move my bishop out. Now that the b pawn is, I could prop him up right here. So I thought, I'll give a little attack to his queen, be a little pesky while his king is still in the center. So he moves his queen right here. And it's at this point I start to kind of think of how can I trap his queen? Because he's on my side of the board. I have a lot of firepower back here that I can use to kind of maybe get the queen trapped somehow. So that was my next goal. I wasn't really exactly sure how to do it. So I moved my queen to g5, targeting this pawn, yes, but also cutting off any retreat down this, the 5th rank here. And my next goal was to get my pawn to guard this spot. Because I was looking around, I was thinking, if he moves here, my queen can get him. If he goes here, he's safe so far, the g4 square. So that's his only safe spot. Everywhere else on the board that the queen can legally move, it would be captured. So that was my thought process. Okay, so my brother moves to defend his pawn, and I move my pawn up, and now his queen has no safe spot to go. And I thought I was really slick, and I would just slide my rook to e1 and have him lose his queen. So my brother castles, and I thought at this point that's a success. I'm gonna win his queen. He's just kind of putting more firepower here and getting his king safe. But rooks do like those, semi-open or open files. So that was a solid castle. And so I moved my rook to e1 as planned, and I think I got him now. He can't possibly keep his queen. And it's true he can't keep his queen, but I was more hoping to trade his queen for a lesser piece, and I kind of didn't realize that I would have to trade my queen with his queen, even though he's up a piece of material. So I forced him into a trade, but I don't really know if it was worth all that kind of chasing over. And I don't know. He's still up a pawn. I like my position at this point, but I don't know if I should have traded my queens or not. All right. Was there okay, there we go. Yeah. I was trying to think of a move I wanted to talk about. So I moved my knight forward. I think my idea was to kind of threaten to take this piece, and if he takes, I would just recapture. I probably should have moved my knight here to a safe spot, threatening to capture, I guess, but I moved it here instead. So we trade again. Which is probably smart on his part because he is up material. So he says, okay, let's whittle this down. And I like that I'm kind of left with this kind of vague threat here. So it's a forcing move, but he doesn't see it that way, and he takes my rook here. So naturally I want to trade back, and I still have this kind of pesky move he has to deal with. So he moves his knight out of the way. I move my rook to f1, just looking to target this pawn again, looking for weaknesses. So he sees that attack and defends his pawn. And then I think this move is really slick. So I move my bishop and capture his pawn on e6. And now if he recaptures, well, then I have this nice little check here, picking up that rook. So that was kind of my idea. It would be super cool. But after I did that, he just moved his king away, didn't take the bait. He saw that trick. And at this point, for some reason, I was debating between taking this pawn with my rook and trading like this, which comes out pretty clean, and I'm attacking this pawn. If he was to move his pawn, he would lose his, his knight. So that's a pretty clean line. But for some reason, I wanted to complicate things. I remember thinking this will make things more complicated. Because I thought maybe if I do something weird, it'll throw him off, and I can end up coming back up. So that's what I did. I moved bishop to f7, which was not a good move looking back at the computer here. This is a blunder, but I thought, oh, this is complicated. So I lose my pawn. That's been wide open here for a bit now. And sorry, my phone's buzzing. I think this is a tricky situation. I got pressure on two pieces. I really have no pressure on them. So my rook is not attacking his bishop is attacking my rook. My bishop's not attacking his rook is attacking my bishop. So now I have two pieces under fire. So I really want to just try to come out not losing a bunch of material here. So I move my rook to attack his bishop, and if he takes, I'll just take back, and I figure that'll be even material. And then he moves his knight, looking maybe after either to gobble up this pawn or just simply more realistically to defend here. And also, if I was to capture his pawn, he could defend that as well. So a good move. And I move my pawn up just to defend my bishop there. And he retreats his bishop, getting it into a safe place. And I notice that his pawn here is exposed. So I pick up his pawn at the same time attacking his rook. And by the way, right now my only plan is to try to get this pawn promoted. That's my number one goal. That's what I'm focused on at this point in time. And that just put me up one pawn right now. He retreats his rook, and I don't know why I moved my rook over here. I just thought I would help guide my my pawn, and if I was to get into some trouble, my rook could be there to kind of provide some firepower. And he just tries to offer this kind of trade. If I was to trade, there's really no way that this pawn is going to get across. I have no light squared bishop to put pressure on this light square. So this guy would eventually, he'd eventually collapse. He'd be done for. So I knew I couldn't take that trade. So I just moved my rook up, creating this threat. If he was to take, I could take back, and I'd still have, a chance, perhaps. So he retreats, gobbles up my pawn. I don't know what I'm doing, to be honest, right now. I think I'm trying to pick up this extra pawn, because I got mad that I lost my H-pawn there. I didn't really know the purpose of this move. I think it's so he can drop his rook down to look over here to maybe create some more pressure in the future. I don't know what he was thinking, because I'm not him. So I gobble up the pawn. I say, hey, that's a victory. I still up one piece. And he moves his king out. And I know we're kind of getting into the end game, and that's when you want to activate your kings. And there's a lot of business going on in this part of the board. So I don't want that king to be a part of it. So I try to just kind of push him back. So I move my bishop to e5, putting him in check. But really, the main goal of that was just to occupy these squares, so he couldn't get into my business here. So he retreats his king, and now I just have control of this square, but this key spot is still available for his king to jump in. So I want to try to make it so he can't get his king there. So I move my bishop to d6. So now I have all three squares in front of the king occupied. So the king can't do anything. He's stuck. He can't move if he wants to. I kind of have him trapped, and then my idea is I could, that would actually be checkmate. But we're not there yet. So he moves his rook, puts some pressure on this piece that is, keeping his king all locked in. But instead of retreating, I move my pawn up, put him in check. I thought that was pretty good. It's pretty tense at this point. Again, my only goal is to get this pawn across and safe. So that's really my battle plan at this point. So I see that if I take with my bishop, he'll have to take with his king, and then I have this rook move right here. So I thought that was a pretty sweet combo, just how this pawn gets around. So pressure, pawn puts him in check, he moves out of the way, I capture with check, and this is a forcing move, so he pretty much has to recapture, and then I put him in check, and the only places he can move is going to give away this final square, which my rook will be guarding, and so I'm going to be able to promote my pawn. So no matter where he moves, this pawn is becoming a queen, and it does. So at this point, he captures my bishop, and I move rook to g6 check. And this is actually where the game stopped. We were playing a 14-day correspondence game, so you had 14 days for each move, and this is where my brother just stopped playing, and I assume he kind of resigned, but I think he did it in Big Brother fashion, where he was going to make me wait 2 weeks till I could post a video about it. But as you can see, I'm up by 6 right now. He only has 2 legal moves, so he can move to d5, or he can move to c7. This one is no good. You'll be checkmated very, very soon. And this is not much better, but you can see I can capture. Now I'm up 11, and that would have been a pretty quick mating ritual there. So very rarely do I beat my brother at chess, but I was playing hard this game. I was giving a lot of attention to each game. I think that just kind of goes to show, like, I lose to lower rated players all the time. The other day I lost to a player who was rated, I think, 500, just by making some silly moves, underestimating your opponent. So there's always a chance in chess. If you play as hard as you can beat some players who aren't playing at the top of their game, or maybe they're not taking the game as seriously as you, or they just underestimate because you're a low-ranked player. So use that to your advantage, and go all out. You'll still lose, 95% of the time playing a very much higher ranked player, but there's always that, 5% opportunity. So don't give up. Keep trying. All right. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks to my brother Matthew for playing, and I will see you guys for some more summer videos in the future. Bye, Swindlers.